Hello, it's Cryptolyze. I hope you are well on this Tuesday, November 7, 2023. So we're meeting today to talk about ALGO, ALGORAND's crypto. As usual, we are going to dissect this video into two parts. A fundamental part, we will come back to what ALGORAND is, and a technical part in which we will analyze the prices to project short, medium, long-term on prices of purchase, sale prices, and it starts right away. As a reminder, you always have the possibility of having free access to the educational course, which is a 60-hour training course worth 400 euros, which allows you to learn blockchain, crypto, investment, etc. Technical analysis, trading, everything to become profitable. Through 130 videos, 400 pages of guides, quizzes to find out where you are in your progress, and all for free. To have access to this lifelong training, simply use the platform of one of our partners. Everything is explained in the comments and descriptions. ALGORAND is a Level 1 blockchain which aims mainly to offer developers functional building blocks to build decentralized applications. ALGORAND, the project, was born when we found ourselves in the wave of Ethereum killers and third-generation blockchains. And so we still have an image which is focused on we are the best, we are the most beautiful, we are the cheapest, we are the most perfect, we are the greenest. Overall, it is the most more systematically. It's a little disturbing, but we find it, finally, this type of communication, we find it a lot on many other blockchains which come from this period. However, we have a blockchain in itself which is relatively interesting, in which we have transactions per second, 10,000, which is rather high, a finality of 3, which is okay, rather consistent with the market, and in fact afterwards we are on proof of stake, which is rather something classic. The technology behind ALGORAND will be useful. So it's a programming language that is a bit different and in which we already have a barrier at the developer level. Well, they are in the process of improving things by offering SDKs, development kits, to make it simpler, for example in Python, and later they have the prospect of releasing other languages, but that doesn't mean it still remains an overlay to the current language they have, so it risks being annoying. Next to it, we have an ecosystem, which is not necessarily the most developed, but which at least has the merit of existing, in which we have a few protocols running, with a TVL of less than 60 million, which is relatively low. When we look at the evolution, we see that the TVL still fell quite significantly over the year 2023, although since July we have had a TVL which is in the process of rising. Mainly thanks to Fox Finance, which still managed to drain a lot of funds, therefore a TVL of 77 million, with a drastic increase in this month, which is rather logical given that there has incentive. Besides, at the level of developers, moreover, I think that I will put in place something which will be equivalent for all blockchains, so as to be able to compare systematically. Since 2022, we have necessarily seen a drop at the level of developers, at the level of commits. Commit being the number of development posts that have been done on GitHub. To put it simply, it's really the number of times developers have uploaded code to GitHub to improve existing code. And in terms of number of developers, we are also generally between 20 and 10. We're going to average around 15 regularly on the project. So quite few developers, and currently a language which is still relatively complicated, in any case, which is not necessarily easy to understand. Afterwards, when we look at what happened with Solana, which was not EVM compatible and which was run on Rust, we succeeded in creating a community. Same for Polkadot, with their own language, the substrate which is derived from Rust, which was also put in place, which worked rather well. So why not? And in terms of tokenomics, we find ourselves on 88% dilution with a max supply at 10 billion algos. So we have something, which is rather consistent with a diluted market cap of 1-2 billion, which is still rather substantial when we actually look at the TVL, okay? That's the only thing that bothers me a little. When we look at the general TVL of ALGORAND and the impact of the ALGORAND ecosystem versus capitalization, I tend to think that it is perhaps still overpriced compared to the usefulness it has. But that does not prevent ALGORAND having some important news, such as, for example, the fact of being the blockchain which was used for the design of a CBDC already existing in, of course, a small country, but that is not the case. However, there are still elements that show us that ALGORAND manages to appeal through its technology, even if we have a public ecosystem that is not necessarily very developed. The question we will have to ask ourselves is how they will approach the transition on the next bull run, because we know very well that bull runs mainly operate in a form of narrative, how they will approach the next narrative and how they are going to surf on it, if ever. For example, this narrative revolves around roll-up stirrups. Unfortunately, ALGORAND will not be able to make the switch. How are they going to do that? Will this be the only narrative or not? Unfortunately, we do not yet have this information. We will have to monitor the project. So, technically, we still have quite a few little things which are quite nice, in which we have a distribution which is in progress. In BC, Arkansas, ST, SAO, Classic Wickoff distribution, and on the other hand, since we have the SAO, so we are in fact sinking into the Sino Fitness, we printed a new batch which was carried out at the level of June 2023. So it really hurt first, and then we reprinted in August once again. We have a downward trend which is still very marked, since we had here the re-acceleration at the beginning of 2023, at the end of 2022. We have since had a big bearish acceleration which was very painful, and we broke the AR, so which is rather classic in terms of the sign of weakness, so which is rather consistent with Wickoff's discussion. Nevertheless, it also means that we are still in a trend which is bearish, therefore which is, and that will only be reversed when we take a break of structure consequent. And the break of structure consequent is at 30 centimes, so still a big prospect of evolution already to get there. We will have to do more, X2, to be able to exceed this level, and before that we have a critical level which is here, this resistance which was the support in fact which was left by the AR, the support left by the weekly candle bodies, in which here we have already stumbled once, in which we certainly risk being rejected. We must consolidate above, therefore break, consolidate above, and there we will have a signal which will be rather candle in the sense that we will have the establishment of an accumulation, where we will have here the SC, the STB, and we will go and get the AR which is there. So potentially with work like that to start again, there we will in fact have an accumulation setup which will be coherent. Here, unfortunately, this is not the case. We are still in an approach where we are really turned towards the bearish and we have no reversal of trend. There is no oblique break. The current oblique break is too weak to be considered as really being a real break. For me, we have to break this level, and then we will have yet another level, which will be the 0.16, in which we might have difficulty getting through, and that's why I'm telling you that there for the moment. Is it interesting to expose yourself to ALGORAND? If you like the project, yes, it may have some interest with a long-term death. Is it interesting in the short term? I think we'll have to see whether or not we're going to break the levels from 0.14 to 0.16. Once again, personally, I would prefer to pay a little more for my crypto, but be sure that I'm getting back on a trail that would be bullish to be able to expose myself to this type of project. Long term, what can we set for ourselves? Generally, we tend to consider that when we're going to do the fitness scene here, the end of the accumulation, for me, which would be the breakup of the 0.45, okay? So from 0.45 to today's price overall, well, the lowest that was left, this is the accumulation zone in terms. We must already start the rise again to say that we are indeed in the accumulation zone to retest the upper parts. Therefore, the 0.3, as we said. But once we have broken this AR, we can consider starting again in an upward dynamic to print what we call an uptrust, therefore a UT, therefore a new AT8 to break the BC. That would mean that we would go beyond $3, and that also means that we would have a cap brand in the region of 30 billion, a diluted cap brand, of course, which is consistent with what we have been able to know about the last bull run, about blockchains which have a utility, which have a community, and which have an interest. So we could indeed go and get the $3, $4, $5, therefore going up to 50 billion of market cap. On the other hand, for that, two things are absolutely necessary. One, that ALGORAND continues to grow and has a growing community. Two, that we have an increasing use and number of real applications at the ALGORAND level. If the blockchain is not used, it means that the ALGO has no interest, and therefore, unfortunately, we will find ourselves with a reduction in the valuation and a general decline of the ALGO. We must take this into consideration, and that's why when we already managed to retest the surroundings of $1, $4, $1, $8, almost we will say $1, $5 to $2, it's a box in which we will have to monitor because that there we will have to make an inventory, yes or no we have TVL. Yes or no we have new applications which are being built because people will take their profit here. The people who are stuck in the EST here will lighten their ring. And so we will have to see whether we will be able to absorb the downward pressure which will take place at that time, which will be classic of a wave of idiocy to start again on a big wave 3, if we don't break. And so, Here, we will have to ask ourselves the question, yes or no, I take profits. To what extent I take profits? Or am I precisely going to go to the holding company to go search much higher because I have an ecosystem next to it that is growing? I have a new narrative that corresponds to the narrative of ALGORAND, so it makes perfect sense to keep. And that's a reflection that we can only have when we are at these levels and when we have the new bull run. I hope you liked this video. If so, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment. It supports the work I do every day, and above all, it makes me very happy. And we'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. for the daily.